Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden podcast is brought to you by Farmers Web.
Farmers Web software gives you the tools you need to manage your entire sales process. Built specifically for farmers' needs, Farmers Web helps you save time, reduce errors, increase efficiency, and provides flexibility for working seamlessly with your whole customer base. Our free account includes features for sharing your real-time and coming soon product availability, as well as the option to create an availability calendar to inform buyers about your product's seasonality. Free accounts also include access to Farmers Web's how-to guides, offering pro tips and best practices on selling online to individual buyers, as well as how to work with such buyers as restaurants, schools, and stores. A 1-month free trial is available for the paid account, which includes all features to manage customers and orders, including accepting online credit card sales, handling advanced pickup or delivery orders, giving select buyers special pricing and payment terms, tracking your buyers' payments, keeping detailed sales records, and much more. Even manage orders and payments for buyers not placing their orders online. Request a demo and learn more at farmersweb.com.
Today's show is also brought to you by Growers & Co. One of the most exciting developments in recent years is that, thanks to Jean-Martin Fortier and his team, there is now a clothing, tool, and apparel company that was built for exactly the type of work we talk about on this show. I know that I have personally grown tired of looking through workwear websites and catalogs built for fishing or carpentry to find what I need for market gardening. So I was thrilled when Growers & Co. came to fruition, and even more thrilled when I tried their clothing. They have done absolutely excellent work. Their clothing is well made and well fitted. The tools are designed by growers and made to last. There's also a magazine that Growers & Co. is putting out twice per year with a focus on small-scale farming, but also that represents the dignity, skills, and creativity required to do this work. I love the clothes. I rock the Muscovich vest all the time, the shirts, the hats, all of it. Anyway, follow Growers & Co. on Instagram and all the platforms, and check out what they have to offer at growers.co. All right, let's jam. Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, Episode 18, Season 3. I'm really excited to bring you today's episode. I caught up with Alfred Melbourne of Three Sisters Gardens in Broderick, California, about the amazing work Alfred and his team are doing out there. Alfred is an Indigenous American, specifically a Hunkpapa Lakota. He also spent nearly 2 decades in prison from when he was a teenager to his late 30s, and we talk about both of those elements of his life and how they both led Alfred to start Three Sisters Gardens. Alfred has many goals for this farm, but one of his hopes with Three Sisters Gardens is to offer a way to help kids like him stay out of prison. He hopes showing them the land and paying them for the work they do there will offer them an alternative. And he's also really into no-till, so this is just a great conversation all around. It is usually at this point that I pitch my book or the Patreon page or whatever, but I think this week I'd like to pitch Alfred. We would love to see the no-till community kick in and help get Alfred's work a little more well-funded. So as you're listening to this, to Alfred telling his story, consider kicking in a few bucks to Three Sisters Gardens. You can go to www.threesistersgardens.com/donate. That's the number 3sistersgardens.com/donate. Also consider sharing the episode. No-till growers will be donating the ad money we received this week to Three Sisters as well. We were just really taken with what Alfred is doing and wanted to kick in. So other than that, let's get into this amazing conversation with Alfred Melbourne of Three Sisters Gardens. Alfred Melbourne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you on. We'll start where we kind of always start with this podcast. Give us a little overview of your operation. Where are you located and how much land are you working on?
Okay. Well, like I said, a pleasure. My name is Alfred Melbourne. I'm a Hunkpapa Lakota, born and raised in Broderick, California. It's right across the river from the capital, Sacramento, a small town. Definitely love it. I'm the founder and director of Three Sisters Gardens. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization aiming to inspire and empower at potential youth in our community.
That's great. And then how much garden space does Three Sisters have?
Wow. Yeah. So it's been a kind of unfolding story here. Fortunately, just real hustle orientated. Right now we operate 4 urban farms in our community, totaling about 1.15 acres.
Wow, that's a lot of space.
Yeah. Just kind of very closely located to one another, spread out. But yeah, it tends to be a lot with some of the recent developments, but I mean, we're managing pretty good. Really happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the story of how those plots came about. Like, what's the sort of founding story of Three Sisters?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty deep story, for myself. Born and raised in the community, having spent a lot of time incarcerated, coming home and feeling really kind of empty, depleted, not really having much purpose, getting into jobs that were somewhat satisfying in the beginning and then just kind of still lacking. I found myself talking to an elder and friend of mine named Francisco Gonzalez, and he had some space open next to his home where he lives and raised his kids, were actually friends of mine. And they had started a little garden there, kind of community garden a while back, and it didn't really pan out some years previous. And he was talking to me about it. We were just sitting down one night, just kind of chewing the fat. And, he said, "Hey, what about this?" And I was like, "Okay." And so next day I showed up and there was quite a bunch of refuse and some remnants of some beds. And I just got to work, man. And one thing that I really like to do is I like to get my hands dirty and apply myself. And so we started off with one small space, our original little garden. And it's a tiny space, but I really was able to stay busy and started working the land. And it kind of just took off from there.
Did you have a agriculture or gardening background?
Not really. My father, our home, like we've always had some small gardens in the house just out of need, necessity, having some type of supplemental food. And I always watched my dad and seen what he was doing, paid close attention, showed me. And from peppers to cucumbers to some tomatoes to cilantro, definitely had stuff going on at the house. And just, kind of had I guess you would say a green thumb naturally. Connecting to the land and just started doing stuff, man. It's just really applying myself and learning everything that I could and started attaching myself to others that were growing, and it just kind of took naturally.
Yeah, that's cool. Can you tell us a little bit about you mentioned, you talked a little bit about Broderick there, but can you talk a little bit about the sort of culture there? Is there a big sort of indigenous population there?
Yeah, I would say, it's just, being historically, it hasn't really been very popular until more recently to even be native. So being born in the kind of mid 70s, myself, always, being brought up with that culture and connection to others closely through ceremony and dance, from my great grandmother. Yeah, there's quite a few, to be honest, and it just kind of spread out in the area, but we definitely stay connected to one another.
Right, that's interesting. I was curious, just thinking about whether or not, being indigenous was a big part of your identity growing up. And
yeah, it was more in my earlier years, and then there was kind of a separation, but just always knowing and being connected to others that were native, just because there's not too many, but definitely have a lot of pride in being native.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned being incarcerated, and you don't have to talk any more about this than you want, but I'm curious, I'm personally really anti-prison. I think that it's incredibly inhumane. But I think a lot of people, especially a lot of listeners, don't really have any sort of understanding of prison, don't have any relationship to it, and maybe don't have anybody that's been in it. Can you sort of give us a little bit of that experience? Like, I mean, what was prison like, and what was it? How did that fuel what you're doing now?
Definitely. It was a major part of kind of providing fuel behind what I do, because to be perfectly honest with you, I'm in total agreement that it's a horrible situation. It's a waste of money and time. But I'd like to put it like this, man. I wouldn't wish prison upon my worst enemy if I had one. I just think that there's not a whole lot of rehabilitating going on if you're not doing it yourself. And it's just a really ugly atmosphere for young folks to be forced into. So it fuels me in that, fortunately, I had my eyes wide open, paying attention, seeing what was going on. I went in at 19 and basically came out when I was 36 years old.
Wow. And
through all that time, I was just kind of like, I wasn't sitting there, plotting, trying to figure out how I could come back and be worse. I seen the destruction of a lot of young and even older lives. And once I finally, I made it home, it was, because you sit there and you don't think, you don't really think about home or the streets, you kind of you're there at the moment and you don't want to set yourself up for anything. And then, like I said, once I finally came home and I was able to look back upon things and see what I made it through, and just glad that I was able to come out somewhat whole and still affected by it all, I knew that there had to be something different for the youngsters in my community, especially the Native, Indigenous, and folks of color that are highly representative in the institutional setting. So, as I started tilling the land and working things and really wearing myself down, I thought to myself, I know that there has to be a way that we can get some of these other youngsters out here involved, to get them to apply themselves, get them to learn something and be able to give back. And, I think that, a lot of these young Native, Indigenous, and people of color, specifically, they have a lot of strong will and determination. It's just got to be able to apply that towards something that, they can see the results from, and in farming, planting the seeds, it's a beautiful thing. And once you can get some of these youngsters to open up their eyes and see the beauty of it, how they can create and then growing the food to feed themselves and their mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters, and really literally putting food on the table, it's just an amazing thing. And fortunate enough to sit back and guide, lead, and mentor some of these youngsters in my community that I see as my former self, and being able to plant these new seeds in their minds and watch them take root and grow. So there's a lot of folks even that I know that older that come by and they see and are happy to participate or to say a few good things, because knowing that we didn't have much when we were youngsters, it was just, the streets, and being able to transform these landscapes in our community and beautify these spaces and kind of have something of our own, even if it's just temporary, it's just really uplifting for ourselves, for our community, and giving back to our elders, women, and children.
Yeah, that's an incredible, it makes me think about, like, with prison in particular, it's this sort of conventional agriculture approach to society where you're not treating the cause, you're sort of treating the symptom, and you're not doing a very good job of it, at all, by putting people in prison. But what you're doing is amazing. It's more the holistic approach of, like, giving people a different option, something that isn't just the streets. And I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, well, I look at it like, we're transforming these landscapes on the outside, and so doing, we're changing some of the thought processes on the inside. And then we know that, when you feed a young person better, that they will perform better, the test scores go up and the behavioral problems go down. And, for someone like myself that, being a full-blooded Native and not owning any land whatsoever, we're latching on to these places wherever we can, finding these open, abandoned lots, or just gaining access through other organizations so that we can beautify these spaces and take pride in them and really kind of show that once we apply ourselves, that what we're capable of doing.
Yeah. Do you have, when you and I spoke the other day, and you said you saw somebody riding up on a bike, and you yelled at them, to like say what's up, and it sounded to me like you were kind of like trying to draw them into the garden. Like, is that kind of how you've approached it? Is just sort of like trying to welcome people in and calling, people that you see maybe headed down the wrong direction, like
all day, every day. That's what I do, man. I don't tire. It's like when you have a passion and a love for something, it just keeps on flowing out. And if you ask most people that are closest to me, they probably heard some of the stories 1,000 times, if not 2,000, or seen me, light up when it comes to telling a story to a new passerby or someone that just happens to see us out there farming and just pulls in. I'm constantly trying to attract as many of the people in our community out to see what it is that we're doing and how they can be a part of it. So yeah, that in particularly a little youngster that we're trying to get him and his brother involved into our organization, just because, the need for them, to have something positive to do. So that's just one thing that you heard. If you were listening, or other times, and I'm constantly on anybody that passes by, really, I think what I was telling you the other day was that, like, once upon a time we'd be on the streets and we'd be trying to push, bad on folks and, lead people astray and, just doing what we thought was right. And now the situation has totally changed. And now, I think I've become the biggest tomato pusher there is in the neighborhood, pushing tomatoes, cucumbers, tomatillos, peppers, and really kind of like stuffing people's pockets with these good, wholesome organic vegetables in hopes that, they just come on back. So, they're really just trying to change the story of where we once were. And I like to say also, we went from plotting to planting, and it's just an amazing thing because, we're getting these youngsters that are, like myself, the most unlikeliest of people, and turning them into farmers, and sharing this dream and this vision to recreate our neighborhood, transforming the landscape on the outside and the inside. So yeah, to me, man, like I said, I don't tire, just constantly trying to bring in as many youth as we can, and anybody that wants to hear what we're doing, I'm more than willing to share. It's just, that kind of, there's these youngsters, that some folks would be like, hey man, we want to introduce you to somebody. I'll use like our first youth, little youngster Miguel, my elder that introduced me to the first space. He says, upon having the conversation, he says, yeah, man, you know what? After a few days of working and seeing, how I was able to work on that space and change it, he's like, man, I got this youngster that I think that'll help you. He goes, but I don't think that he'll stick around, he's kind of getting influenced by some other things, and young man thinking he knows things. And, I was able to meet this youngster and have a few conversations with him and just kind of relate with what he was going through and kind of like his point in life. Because when I was a really young man, I was 19 years old when I first got incarcerated. So it was kind of like, when something like that happens, it's like the clock kind of stops, and just, I could really go back easily because I had so much time to ponder my life as a young man and the things that I did. So, I have that frame of mind still. So being able to connect and relate with this youngster, he stuck around, and sure enough, he's still here to this day. He actually worked for us this afternoon on one of our mushroom beds that we're trying to install in one of our newer farms. And it's just like that. It's just kind of these youngsters that nobody thinks, nobody could reach. And it's just having that heart, taking the time and really just trying to connect with these youngsters. So, I think that's just a big part of our story, wanting to bring all these youngsters in, the ones that people have counted out and kind of just thought, all right, well, that youngster's going to end up locked up. I could see it. I'd be like, no, man, that's a total waste of time. No matter what it takes, no matter what we have to do, we have to intercede. We have to step up and do whatever we can, because, it's a life of disappointment and misery. And like I said earlier, I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy if I had one. So, every time that we can bring a youth in that was kind of walking astray, or you could tell kind of heading down the wrong path, we're going to gladly, step up and go the extra mile to try to help intercede and bring towards Three Sisters Garden.
Yeah, that's great. Are you, do you have employees at the moment?
We have we have a crew lead, we have a supervisor, and myself being the director, I'm working to get my salary covered, but I mean, I don't really take no pay right now. So I guess I'm an employee, but I'm like a volunteer for now. So, and then the youth that we have about 14 youth that come regularly, and they get paid a stipend for showing up.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, giving them financial incentive.
Yeah, we give them $12 an hour. We figure, we want to take their time seriously, and we know that they have some things that they could use and they want, and just trying to be able to let them know that we take them seriously. And I mean, slowly but surely, we're making some real farm workers out of them.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the farm. You also sell, like in terms of produce, I saw on your site that you're doing a CSA. Are you doing a lot of marketing that way, or is it also donation based? Where does the food go generally?
Okay, well, we do have a CSA. Our goal, however, is to give from 40 up to 60% of our vegetables away to local food insecure homes. So we weren't actually going to do a CSA until this past season when, we had the pandemic really take hold and we had to change our whole marketing scheme. We really wanted to push through some of the local restaurants and our farm stand just to bring people out to really see the work we're doing and get the community involved and get the youth to engage. So as things kind of developed and we've seen how kind of bad things were, so we really started focusing on the CSA. So we did have our first season of CSA, and it went fairly well. We had around 15 full members, and I would say about 20 to 25 kind of part-time. We had some 4-week options, some single boxes. So, it went really well. And we also did a cut flower bouquet for some added value. And yeah, it went really good. Kind of for our first season, it's we did really good. And on top of that, yeah, we was able to maintain, and we gave away around, I say about 10,000 pounds of vegetables locally. And the youth at this particular time, they actually weren't paid. So they were just coming out and volunteering, showing up at 7:00 in the morning, day in and day out, man. And it was a real amazing season, considering everything that was going on around us. But so our model now is we're still going to be running a CSA, and then we have we'll be hoping to attend a local farmers market, and still trying to get a couple of the restaurants involved, just because we want to have that connection, so that having a diversified kind of advertising marketing approach, and getting our youngsters in to get some experience when it comes to sales and connecting with some of these chefs at the restaurants and getting them engaged, hopefully, and starting to cook some food too, getting inspired like that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you mentioned having with everything going on around us, like COVID. How did that affect what you're doing? I mean, was that for some farms, it helped with marketing and stuff to some extent, but also, I mean, it affected like working and all that stuff. How did that hit you all?
Yeah, well, initially it hit us really bad because, of course, I was going to err on the side of caution and protect our youth at all costs. So I had to send everybody home, and if they didn't know how to deal with it, they were pretty upset, to be honest with you, in the beginning. But I think they understood. So it kept things. It made things really hard because it was myself, one of our crew leads, Rainey, who stuck around, and my former partner, Manuela, who really stepped up to the plate, and we really had to kind of pick up where everybody had to go home and left off. And so it was more hours for us. It was that much harder work. Consider about 7 or 8 youth that were gone, and 3 other interns and volunteers that were just nowhere to be seen. So we kind of just dug our heels in and really kind of did our best and was able to get things done. So Yeah, and then on top of all of that, we also had, all the fires out here in California, and that thing just was another added difficulty with the smoke. But yeah.
Yeah, talk about. Well, I was going to ask you a little bit about the climate there because it's like northeast of San Francisco. So if anyone that's listening has been there, but can you talk a little bit about your climate, and then I want to hear about how that smoke affected you, like what you had to shut down and stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely, we were in the thick of it. It was pretty bad, man. It was really scary with everything burning out around us, and the smoke, all the ash coming down after the fires actually kind of died down some. Pretty overcast, a lot of ash all over, having to use the N95 mask for a second, and then just another level of kind of health crisis. But fortunately, the plants are resilient, and we kind of held through and we just did our best once again, and we was able to make it through. Things weren't damaged really. It was just kind of just another trial that was pretty rough, but fortunately, like I said, we made it through and we kept on pushing.
Yeah, that's got to be so tough. We don't get wildfires like that out here, and I know so many people in the West this year had it so rough with that smoke. I just can't imagine working in those circumstances.
Yeah, no, it was difficult.
Okay, so then the climate in general in that area, are you getting hard frost and freezes in the wintertime?
Yeah, we just about a week or so ago, it just froze kind of out of nowhere. It got so cold, around 28 degrees, and yeah, we had tried to start some plants early just because it was pretty warm and we were hopeful. And so it was about a week ago now, a week and a half ago maybe, and then kind of just killed off, I don't know, about 60% of what we had started. So yeah, it was pretty bad, man. We just got done planting a bunch more today to kind of hopefully recuperate from that. And then as soon as that frost passed, we had like a windstorm come through here. I mean, it was about, I don't know, they said it got up to about 30, 35 miles per hour and just kind of blowing everything around. So the weather fluctuating pretty drastically here recently. Surprisingly today, yesterday has been really warm. Just kind of trying to enjoy that and make sure that the hoop houses are opened up and the plants, the little seedlings we got going are comfortable. We hope to have a good start coming up, but definitely some changes recently.
Yeah, that's wild. And then are your summers hot too? What's your summer heat like?
Oh yeah, it could get pretty warm over here. We can get anywhere to like 105, 107. I think the warmest that I've been in out here was about 111. So yeah, it gets pretty hot during the summer. Yeah. But this is California though. So, I think a lot of us out here are pretty used to it, just not super hot,
Yeah. Yeah. I guess they call it that dry heat though too. So that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
It's still intense. Hey, you all, just jumping in real quick to get a word from our sponsors like Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil makes NOP-compliant living potting soils in Cleveland, Ohio, with food scraps they haul and compost themselves. Each batch of soil is tested against the competitors and the results are in. Plants vote for Tilth Soil. To learn more about their full line of products, please visit www.tilthsoil.com. The show is also brought to you by you, the patrons, at patreon.com/no-till-growers. But like I said at the top, this week, I'd love to see Alfred's work get better funding. So No-Till Growers is donating our ad revenue from this show this week to Three Sisters, and you can kick in a few bucks to them as well over at threesistersgardens.com/donate. That's the number 3, Sisters Gardens. But that said, I still want to honor our Patreon shout-outs, so big shout-outs this week to Scott Harris, Matt Turpin, Growing Naturally LLC, Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, Scott Snodgrass, Jean-Martin Fortier. Big thank you to all of our show supporters. All right, back to Alfred. So one of the things, like looking over some of the garden pictures that I like really latched onto, the first thing that kind of struck me was that the soil is so well covered. Like it seems like you use a lot of mulches And I'm kind of curious, like, if you can sort of give us an idea of your sort of approach with gardening.
Well, we're trying to keep something growing at all times. So we're growing year round. If at the very least cover cropping the field. But I don't know. I think it's more like my eye. I have, I guess you would say, somewhat of a OCD. So I like to limit any type of weed pressure down whatsoever, keeping the ground covered and the soil moving and alive. So dealing with the weed pressure, I really I got tired of constantly cutting it down and pulling out. So what I wanted to go with was some straw and cover up the ground so that we wouldn't have to be weeding so much. And then also, it's just for my eye. When I was able to get some drone pictures and looking at things over, it just didn't look right. So I have, like I said, this kind of close eye that when I see things, I wanted just things to look really clean and neat. So we went with a bunch of mulch wood chips on that perimeter, and then on the inside we used some rice straw.
Yeah, and then are you topping the beds with compost as well? It's sort of, is that accurate? It looks like there's like a compost layer on there too.
For sure, yeah. So we use organic compost constantly, as much as we can get to keep that soil alive and moving and with as much nutrients as we can. What's
the compost situation? Are you having a hard time getting good compost there, or is it easy to come by?
Well, this past season, we started the new farm on 5th and C Street. And fortunately, the program that we participate in, the Center for Land-Based Learning, the West Sacramento Urban Farm program, they were donated like 40 yards of organic compost. I can't recall by who at the moment, but it was a donation for all of us farmers in the incubator farmer program to use. And I had to I'm not even going to lie, probably took at least 20 yards of that organic compost while we had the opportunity. We kept going back and filling up the truck, and nobody else was coming out. Kind of 1 week, nobody came out. Second, no one came out. There was maybe a little bit gone. I was like, well, we can use it. So at that point in time, yeah, we was able to get a bunch of that donated compost. But other than that, we just buy stuff from one of the local kind of gravel and compost companies, and they give us a pretty good deal. So
yeah, that's awesome. And then so whenever you're planting, I'm just curious, like how you're just applying like a little bit of compost after you plant and then using that just sort of like a structural mulch, right?
Well, what I do is we'll lay down, we'll lightly till the bed. We use a broad fork and a tilter. That's what I'm trying to stay at right now. And it's like a bio-intensive no-till. We'll, any of the previous crops, we'll take some loppers and we'll cut down as low as we can to the base, leave all the roots in place in the ground, and then we'll take a broad fork if the ground's a little bit harder, and we'll use it and then tilt the soil just a little bit with the tilter, and we'll add some compost on top of all of that, and then we'll plant right back into it.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Just looking at the picture, I couldn't quite tell, but I like that approach. I love the idea. I think a lot of people don't think of compost necessarily as like there's a lot about compost mulching, coming out, and a lot of people are doing like deep compost mulch where they basically just plant straight into the compost, but using it in the same way you would use maybe like straw or hay or something like that, just to just cover the soil to keep the weeds and from coming up and the moisture in, is cool. I don't think that we talk enough about that. Like, I think that's a really cool way of using compost.
Yeah, and it's a lot of nutrients, and weed suppression. So yeah, so far so good for us. We're just kind of barely getting started, and with some soil samples coming up here, we'll be able to see some of the results.
And is your family ever involved in terms of, like, you mentioned your dad? Is he still around? Is he still able to be involved in the garden?
Yeah, he doesn't come out too much because he's pretty busy working himself. But I mean, being able to see, how proud he is of the stuff that I'm doing, just really kind of keeps me going and motivated, So he's come out a few times and kind of just really been in awe himself, seeing that from the one or two plants of every particular thing that he was growing, how we just kind of just really upped it, and we're doing hundreds of peppers, hundreds of tomatoes at times. And yeah, it's a pretty good feeling being able to see, how happy he is, and being able to give him some of our hottest peppers to try. How he used to kind of, I'm not even gonna lie, how he would threaten me with these really hot peppers when we were kids or younger. Now I'm like, okay, here we go. I got some for you now, and he's still got some plants going at the house too. So yeah, it's a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, the hot pepper challenge.
Yeah.
What are some of the crops that you're focusing on for 2021? What are some what's kind of in the mix?
Yeah, well, definitely we have Three Sisters going. We try to push that kind of model, native indigenous wisdom and knowledge as much as possible, talking about the intercropping. So we'll be doing some Three Sisters and being able to give some good teachings on that. But really, some of the heirloom tomatoes, bunch of cucumbers. What do we have? We have some Monte Gusto beans, Carmenante beans, pole beans, some bush beans. Really kind of spread it out as much as possible. We're doing about 6 different varieties of cucumbers. We've had some that have taken really well, and like the striped Armenian and the soil long cucumbers, really long, large cucumbers that folks ain't really used to seeing. And definitely, the tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes that folks ain't really used to a lot of this stuff, and being that it's organic, we know it's good for them. So we're trying to get them to experiment and kind of try new things and see how good they taste. A bunch of cherry tomatoes too. We had some really good luck with these citrine cherry tomatoes. And yeah, just, I think that as the saying goes, most folks, they usually buy the same 10 variety of vegetables, pretty much their whole life. And right now, I think that we're going to be growing up to maybe about, 35 different varieties of vegetables to be able to get folks to look at. And of course, a bunch of flowers. We'll be doing the cut flowers again. We're doing adding as many flowers as we can. The marigolds, the zinnias, celosia. What else do we got? Calendula. Yeah, we're just really trying to, sunflowers, just beautify the spaces, bring in the pollinators and all those beneficials. So, but yeah, lots of good vegetables.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you give us the rundown on Three Sisters? I mean, I think that it gets kind of co-opted by gardeners as just this, this combination of corn and beans and squash, but can you give us a little bit more of what it means for you and your farm?
Oh yeah. I mean, just in our namesake, the Three Sisters Gardens, it's the tale of the Three Sisters, the legend, how these 3 sister plants, how they grow together perfectly, how the corn provides the tall stalks for the beans to climb on, the beans being the nitrogen fixers to keep on adding nitrogen to the ground, allowing the corn to get taller and taller, and the beans in turn getting big, climbing, and then of course planting that squash that keeps the ground covered, allows for some weed suppression and some keeping the moisture in the soil. One of the biggest things for us is really just talking about the native indigenous knowledge, how we've been here for thousands of years, and not only have we been here, but we've thrived in that we're still here. So trying to get to connect to some of these youth who are native indigenous and have very little knowledge just because of what's taught in schools, or like I was saying earlier, how it wasn't too popular to be native, even folks having to suppress speaking languages and hiding their culture just because of the more dominant culture. But now, kind of coming back out into the limelight and able to let these folks know, hey man, we have a lot to be proud of. There's been natives here for thousands of years, and this is your homeland. So connect with it, come on out and there's others like you. So for me, I really enjoy telling the story of the legend of the three sisters to the youth, and seeing how these three sisters work together. And then, of course, being, with my background, a lot of folks, they're like, man, how do you, three sisters, they thought it might be something tough or maybe even hard, dare I say, and, I feel like, it's that soft touch that, that kind of feminine side that we have to reach out to and get close to and not be ashamed of things, So, but native indigenous knowledge, natives have been here for thousands of years, and we'll be here for thousands more, falling back on the knowledge and caring for the land like we always have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. I'm curious, are you doing other inner plantings as well? Are there other ones that you kind of play around with?
Right now we're doing the basil and tomatoes, cilantro and tomatoes, and really, there is a lot more that I want to do, but just not really having the ability to be doing too much experimenting right now, but definitely trying to grow a lot of plants together so that we can, have that natural defense towards other pests, but really wanting to get into growing these hedgerows, native plants. One of our goals is to do up to 30 to 40% native plants in our fields, so that we can acknowledge, these original ecologies and these plants that have been kind of turned away for, all these other non-native plants, but just trying to really get things back to a more natural setting to attract all the beneficials that are used to these things.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't need to tell you this, but natives in America were keeping a lot of those wild plants around. A lot of the ones that, when America was colonized, a lot of those native plants kind of died out because we didn't have anybody to tend them. And I think that's such a sad loss.
Yeah, I think one of the things real recently too, when it came to the fires, that a lot of the California natives, just giving them the respect and acknowledgement that they used to do the controlled burns, with good reason, to revitalize the land and to clear any of that extra foliage out. And then for a long time, they were able to follow their own practices and their own beliefs and care for the land, being that all the land was either taken up or kind of just basically taken from them, and seeing the benefit of it now. So I was happy to see recently a lot of good articles out how natives are being allowed to practice more these traditional burns, and seeing that the natives that have been here, like I said earlier, for thousands of years, really had it right when it came to caring for the land and revitalizing things. So, it takes a minute, but these things always come back around, and being able to see that, and a lot of these natives that have that knowledge and are able to share it again and really show that, that meaningful connection to the land has never escaped the natives here in California or all over Turtle Island for that matter.
Yeah, I think that's so great. And I think that's so important that indigenous folks are finally getting the recognition for the work that they've done and the agricultural practices that they've been doing for thousands of years. I'm curious, with the hedgerows, are you going to be putting those on all of your plots?
We want to. That would be our goal optimally. I'm just trying to get some knowledge and experience in doing so. But unfortunately, the land that we do care for right now is not ours, and we can't really grow any perennial type plants without kind of more permission through the owners, because we're only going to be there for a limited amount of time. So as we're able to kind of gain our own space eventually, that would be our goal. We do have a piece of land that we gained access to out here in Sacramento area, and we hope to put hedgerows kind of throughout, in between some of the field and all around the perimeter. It just, we understand the benefits of it, natural kind of wind block and bringing in all the beneficials, and being able to talk about a lot of the native plants that we would like to get in the ground.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, is that one of your biggest limitations, is not owning the land that you're working on?
Yeah, it's a limitation, of course, but I mean, we're definitely grateful for the time where we're at now. But I mean, of course, we'll talk about one of our plots in particularly where we farm with the International Rescue Commission, who is we're able to have access to about it's almost a half acre. But all the other farmers on that land, they're actually refugees from, say, Bhutan or somewhere near the Himalayas. And so it's kind of ironic that, being a full-blooded native, actually farming on land with a bunch of other refugees. So, but again, like I said, we're going to farm wherever we can. We're going to be grateful and appreciative because we're able to grow food and give back to our community. But ultimately, we're just trying to gain the experience and build the support that we hope that eventually we can get some land of our own and be able to put down some real roots and see the benefits and the fruits of our labor kind of passed on to other like-minded Native and Indigenous folks, people of color, so that this experience can keep on thriving and being passed on for generations and having space that we can build up and really have a lot of pride in. So
yeah, I hope you're able to do that. I really love what you're working on. I mean, in terms of sort of agricultural inspirations right now, like where are you kind of looking for, different inspirations on how you're planting and those sorts of things?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Prior to this COVID-19, I had the good fortune to go and check out Singing Frog Farms, and I believe that's in Sebastopol, California. And just the no-till methods that they're using, how they've increased their soil organic matter and been able to water just so little because their soil retains so much water and constantly turning over. So I would have to say Singing Frog Farms, it was really amazing to go and listen to Paul and Elizabeth Kaiser and see how excited they were and just how cool they were in person, and then having the ability to participate in some conferences and then seeing them be the keynote speakers. And I'm like, wow, I felt like I almost knew them. And then just listening to their approach and the work that they're doing, it's been real inspiring for me to try to follow in their footsteps and constantly rotating our beds and growing year round like they are, the CSA they have and the way that they care for the land. So they've been a big inspiration for me.
Yeah, that's great. Paul and Elizabeth are so amazing. They were a big inspiration for our own farm as well. And I know you talked about that too, like leaving the roots in the soil, and some of those other little techniques are definitely stuff that we kind of gained from them. Yeah,
well, and then also I will have to say that, definitely want to mention the Center for Land-Based Learning. They're also a nonprofit organization, and I'm an incubator farmer with their program, the West Sacramento Urban Farm Program, and they give us a bunch of classes. There was a lot more prior to COVID-19, and then we were able to participate in workshops and different classes on accounting, QuickBooks, and soil health, and of course hedgerows, and just a lot of good help. Just really happy to be a part of the program, and then we licensed some land through them. That's how we have 2 of our farms. So definitely want to big shout out to the CLBL.
Nice. Is there anything that, like, if somebody wanted to help with funding, like where would they go? Like, do you have any recommendations for how people can help support what you're doing?
Definitely. Yeah, they can go onto our website. That's 3sistersgardens.com. That's a number 3sistersgardens.com. And you can donate directly, buy a yearly CSA membership for donations to a local family, and just reach out like that. Definitely trying to get some support for this upcoming season. Myself being the director and founder, I wear a lot of different hats. So trying to raise some funds right now to get administrative assistant and pays for some of our supervisory and our crew leads right now. So yeah, go to threesistersgardens.com and you can donate, get involved, volunteer. Yeah,
dude. And we gotta get enough people pitching in to get you some salary for all the great work you're doing.
Yeah. You know what? To me, man, I live very meagerly, coming from where I came from. I know how to do a lot with a little, man, but truly, one of these days I look forward to taking some kind of vacation. But for right now, my love right now is just turning these unused lots into something and really kind of just letting the imagination kind of take over. And fortunately, with these stay-at-home orders that took place and being an essential worker like that, being able to still go out and care for the land, it's just been amazing for me personally. Honestly, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else right now, and being able to connect with awesome folks. And one of the things that I've said, it's like tending the land has, kind of given me more of a voice to talk about, things in my community, put me in connection and audiences that I never would have thought possible, sitting in a cell years ago, wondering, what I could possibly do. So I like to say that, it's so much more than just lettuce. We're connecting with our community, county supervisors, city council folks, going on and trying to speak on different policy when it comes to the criminal injustice system, and how we can offer, real resources and help towards those folks that are really just drowning out here. The criminal injustice system just being a terrible situation. I think a huge waste of money, when we can really train folks, the unlikeliest of folks, to cultivate and care for the land, and planting these cucumbers and tomatoes, and knowing that just a little bit of patience, you can get a lot out of a handful of seeds. And getting these youngsters to see themselves in the tomorrows, and not just here in the present, and trying to let them see that they have a future. Like I said, this is what I want to be doing. So it's just a labor of love, truly, really is. So, I love looking at the pictures, connecting with these youngsters, and seeing the amazement on their faces, and having them show up at 7:00 in the morning, not even getting paid. I think that was a huge, major feat, because they saw what they were doing. All the vegetables that we produced last season, these youngsters got to get all that experience and partake in all of that. And yeah, it's just been a really, really good time.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, Alfred Melbourne, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, truly appreciate it, Jesse. I was able to see some of the stuff you guys are doing, and I'm really impressed, man. I'm looking forward to following you guys and getting some more experience and hearing what you all have to say. Thank you, guys.
All right, if you enjoyed that episode, please consider kicking in a few bucks over at threesistersgardens.com/donate. That's the number 3, sistersgardens.com/donate. Also, I will put a link in the show notes. Follow Alfred on Instagram and all the places at 3 Sisters Gardens. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you're getting it and leave a review. But this week, all reviews must donate to 3 Sisters Gardens. Not sure exactly what that looks like, but also, I'm not a scientist. Big thanks, as always, to Jackson Roulette and Josh Satin for their help. Thanks to Willie, Music Scientist Breeding, for the theme music. Thank you times a million to Hannah Crabtree for all of their help behind the scenes. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye. I really appreciate your time, Alfred. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. So do I, man. And just going to continue to try to give back and change the narrative in our community and uplift and inspire and empower these youngsters. Thank you, Jesse.